My name is Anna Reeves, and I'm about to lose everything I've worked for. Not because of market forces or bad business decisions, but because of the two people who should support me the most, my husband and his mother. I stared at my laptop screen, the glow illuminating my face in the dim light of our living room. It was past midnight, but I couldn't sleep. My tech startup, Dreamscape, was on the verge of a breakthrough. We were weeks away from launching our revolutionary virtual reality platform, and I could almost taste success. The sound of shuffling feet broke my concentration. Nolan, my husband, appeared in the doorway, his hair tousled from sleep. "Anna, what are you still doing up?" he asked, his voice thick with drowsiness. I sighed, closing my laptop. "Just finalizing some details for the launch. We're so close, Nolan. This could change everything for us." He frowned, crossing his arms. "Us. Anna, when was the last time we had dinner together? Or went on a date? Your company is consuming you." "It's temporary," I assured him, rising to my feet. "Once we launch Dash." "That's what you said 6 months ago," Nolan interrupted, his tone sharp. "And a year before that. When does it end?" I felt a flicker of irritation. "This is important to me, Nolan. I thought you understood that." "I do, but—" He hesitated, then dropped the bomb. "I want you to cut back your hours. We need more time together. As a family." I stared at him, stunned. "You can't be serious. We're weeks away from launch." "I am serious," Nolan said, his jaw set. "I'm tired of being married to your laptop. I want my wife back." "I'm right here," I snapped, gesturing to myself. "This is who I am, Nolan. An entrepreneur, a businesswoman. You knew that when you married me." "I married a woman, not a corporation," he retorted. "Is it so wrong to want a normal life? To have dinner together? To plan for our future?" I felt a surge of anger. This is our future. Can't you see that? With Dreamscape's success, we could have everything we've ever dreamed of. Nolan shook his head, a look of disappointment clouding his features. "All I dream of is a wife who's present, who wants to build a life with me, not just a business empire." His words stung, but I stood my ground. "I won't apologize for my ambition, Nolan. This is who I am." "Then maybe we have a problem," he said quietly, turning to leave. "Think about what I said, Anna. Something has to change." As he disappeared down the hallway, I sank back onto the couch, my mind reeling. How had we gotten here? When had my dreams become a wedge between us? I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over Lucy's number. My business partner and best friend would understand. She'd tell me to stay strong, to fight for my vision. But as I stared at the screen, a notification popped up. An email from Nolan's mother, Rose. The subject line made my heart sink. "Family dinner. No excuses." I groaned, tossing the phone aside. It was bad enough dealing with Nolan's sudden ultimatum. Now I had to face his overbearing mother too? As I sat there in the quiet of the night, I realized I was at a crossroads. My startup or my marriage. My dreams or Nolan's vision of a normal life. Something had to give, but I'd be damned if it was going to be me. The aroma of roast beef filled the air as I stepped into Rose's immaculate home. My mother-in-law's dinner parties were always a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare, and tonight promised to be no exception. "Anna, darling." Rose's shrill voice rang out as she emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a floral apron. "So glad you could tear yourself away from that little computer project of yours." I forced a smile. "It's good to see you too, Rose. And it's not a little project, it's a multi-million-dollar tech startup." Rose waved her hand dismissively. "Yes, yes. Now come help me in the kitchen. A woman's place is by the stove, after all." I bit my tongue, following her into the kitchen where Nolan was already nursing a beer. He avoided my gaze, focusing intently on peeling potatoes. "So, Anna," Rose began, her tone deceptively sweet. "When are you and Nolan going to give me some grandchildren? I'm not getting any younger, you know." I nearly dropped the plate I was holding. "We haven't really discussed it," I managed, shooting a glance at Nolan. He remained silent, suddenly very interested in his potato peeling technique. Rose clucked her tongue. Well, you're not getting any younger either, dear. Tick-tock, as they say. My biological clock is just fine. Thank you. I snapped, my patience wearing thin. And we have other priorities right now. What could be more important than family? Rose pressed, her eyes narrowing. Nolan tells me you're always working. A good wife knows how to balance her duties. I slammed the serving spoon down on the counter. My work is important, Rose. I'm building something that could change lives. And last I checked, it's the 21st century. Women can have careers and families. Not if they want to do either well, Rose retorted. You can't have it all, Anna. Something has to give. I turned to Nolan, desperate for support. Are you going to say anything? He shrugged, still not meeting my eyes. Mom has a point, Anna. We're not getting any younger. I felt like I'd been slapped. I can't believe this. You're ganging up on me now. We're just concerned, Rose interjected, her voice sickly sweet. Nolan deserves a proper family life. Don't you want that for him? What I want, I said through gritted teeth, is a supportive family who respects my choices and my career. Rose's eyes flashed. And what about what Nolan wants? What about his dreams of a family? Those are your dreams, Rose. I shot back. Not Nolan's, and certainly not mine. At least not right now. The kitchen fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Nolan finally looked up, his expression a mix of guilt and frustration. Anna, he began, maybe we should talk about this later. In private. I shook my head, backing away from both of them. No, I think I've heard enough. Enjoy your dinner. I have work to do. As I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, I heard Rose's voice behind me. You see, Nolan? This is what happens when a woman puts her selfish ambitions before her family. I paused at the threshold, turning back to face them. No, Rose. This is what happens when a woman refuses to be bullied into a life she doesn't want. And Nolan. I met his eyes, seeing the conflict there. When you're ready to have an adult conversation about our future, without your mother's input, you know where to find me. With that, I walked out, leaving behind the suffocating expectations and judgments. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucy. How'd it go with the dragon lady? I smiled, feeling a wave of relief. At least someone was in my corner. About as well as you'd expect, I typed back. Meet me at the office? I could use a friendly face and some actual support right now. Lucy's response was immediate. On my way. We've got a company to run and a world to change. Screw the haters. I laughed, feeling my spirits lift. Rose and Nolan might not understand my dreams, but that wouldn't stop me from chasing them. Something had to give, all right, but it wouldn't be me or my ambitions. I stormed into our house, slamming the door behind me. The sound echoed through the empty rooms, a fitting backdrop for the fury coursing through my veins. Nolan's car pulled into the driveway moments later. I steeled myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. He walked in, his face a mask of frustration and guilt. Anna, we need to talk. Oh, now you want to talk. I spat. Where was this desire for communication when your mother was ambushing me with her outdated expectations? Nolan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I know my mom can be intense, but she means well. I laughed bitterly. Means well? She basically called me a failure as a wife because I dare to have ambitions beyond popping out grandchildren for her. That's not fair, Anna. She just wants what's best for us. No. I corrected him, my voice sharp. She wants what's best for you. What about what I want? What about my dreams? Nolan's expression hardened. And what about my dreams, Anna? When do they get to matter? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What are you talking about? I've always supported your dash. Have you? He interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like your startup is the only thing that matters to you anymore. The accusation stung, but I refused to back down. That's not true, and you know it. I'm building something important, something that could secure our future. At what cost? Nolan shot back. We barely see each other anymore. You're always at the office or glued to your laptop. When was the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about work? I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. He had a point, but I wasn't about to admit it. So, what? You want me to give up everything I've worked for? Become a 1950s housewife like your mother? Nolan's face flushed with anger. Don't twist my words. I'm not asking you to give up your career. I'm asking you to make room for us in your life. There is room for us, I insisted. But right now, my company needs me. We're on the verge of something big, Nolan. Can't you see that? All I see is my wife slipping away, he said, his voice quieter now, tinged with sadness. I miss you, Anna. I miss us. For a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt. But then I remembered Rose's condescending words, Nolan's silence in the face of her attacks. The guilt hardened into resolve. If you really missed us, I said coldly, you would have stood up for me tonight. Instead, you let your mother steamroll over me and my choices. Nolan's eyes widened. That's not fair. You know how Mom gets. I was trying to keep the peace. Keep the peace. I echoed incredulously. At what cost, Nolan? My dignity? My self-respect. You're overreacting, he said, exasperation creeping into his tone. Mom just wants grandkids. Is that so terrible? I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. So, you agree with her? You think I should just set aside everything I've worked for to pop out babies on your mother's schedule? Nolan hesitated, and in that moment of silence, I saw the truth. He did agree with her, at least partly. Wow. I breathed, taking a step back. I can't believe this. When did you become your mother's puppet? That's not fair, Anna, Nolan protested, but his words rang hollow. I shook my head, suddenly feeling very tired. You know what's not fair? Having a husband who doesn't support my dreams, who'd rather I conform to his mother's outdated ideals than chase my own ambitions. Anna, please, Nolan started, reaching for me, but I pulled away. No, I said firmly. I need some space. I'm going to stay at the office tonight. Maybe longer. I need to think. As I packed a bag, Nolan hovered in the doorway, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. Is this it then? Are you choosing your company over our marriage? I paused, meeting his gaze.
No, Nolan.
I'm choosing myself. Maybe it's time you figured out what you really want, without your mother whispering in your ear. With that, I walked out, leaving Nolan standing in our bedroom, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. As I drove to the office, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. Something had to give in this situation, and I was determined it wouldn't be my dreams or my self-respect. The office had become my sanctuary over the past week. I'd thrown myself into work, barely sleeping as I fine-tuned our VR platform. It was easier to focus on lines of code than the mess my personal life had become. A knock on my office door jolted me from my coding trance. Lucy poked her head in, concern etched on her face. Anna, Nolan's here. He says he needs to talk to you. My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to Nolan since our fight, screening his calls and ignoring his texts. Send him in, I said, steeling myself. Nolan entered, looking haggard. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Then I remembered his betrayal, and my resolve hardened. Anna, he began, his voice hoarse. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. So talk. He sighed, running a hand through his unkempt hair. I've been thinking a lot this past week. About us, about our future. He paused, seeming to gather his courage. I can't do this anymore, Anna. The late nights, the constant work talk, the empty house. It's killing me. I felt a flicker of anger. So you'd rather I give up everything I've worked for? That's not what I'm saying, Nolan protested. But something has to change. We can't go on like this.
We.
I echoed. Or you and your mother? Nolan's face hardened. Leave my mother out of this. She only wants what's best for us. I laughed bitterly. No, she wants what's best for you. And apparently so do you. That's not fair, Anna, Nolan snapped. I've supported your dreams for years. But at what point do my dreams matter? When do we start thinking about our future as a family? The word family hung in the air between us, loaded with unspoken expectations. I stood up, my hands flat on my desk. I am thinking about our future. This company could set us up for life. At what cost? Nolan countered. Our marriage? The family we talked about having. I felt my temper rising. The family you and your mother decided we should have, you mean? Without bothering to consult me. Nolan's face flushed with anger. This isn't just about kids, Anna. It's about us. About the life we promised to build together. I am building that life. I shouted, my frustration boiling over. Just because it doesn't fit your mother's narrow definition dash. Enough about my mother, Nolan roared, slamming his fist on my desk. The sudden violence made me flinch. This is about us, Anna. And I can't do it anymore. I won't. A heavy silence fell between us. I stared at Nolan, really seeing him for the first time in years. The man before me wasn't the supportive partner I'd married. He was a stranger, shaped by his mother's expectations and his own resentment. What are you saying, Nolan? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He straightened, his jaw set. I'm saying you have a choice to make. Your company or our marriage. Because I can't live like this anymore. I felt like I'd been slapped. You're giving me an ultimatum? Nolan nodded, his expression grim. I am. And if you choose your company, well, I've already spoken to a lawyer. The words hit me like a physical blow. A lawyer? You're talking about divorce? I don't want it to come to that, Nolan said, his voice softening slightly. But I'm prepared to go through with it if I have to. I sank back into my chair, my mind reeling. I can't believe this. You'd throw away our marriage because I refuse to conform to your mother's outdated ideals. This isn't about my mother, Nolan insisted. This is about us, about the future we promised each other. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man I'd married, the one who'd supported my dreams, was gone. In his place stood someone I barely recognized, someone willing to destroy our life together over this. Get out, I said quietly. Nolan blinked, taken aback.
What?
Get out, I repeated, my voice stronger now. If you want a divorce, fine. Have your lawyer contact mine. But I won't be bullied or threatened, not by you, and certainly not by your mother. Nolan stared at me for a long moment, a mix of anger and sadness in his eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. As the door closed behind him, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The die was cast. Now it was time to fight, for my company, for my dreams, and for myself. The office had become my sanctuary, but even its familiar walls couldn't shield me from the storm brewing in my personal life. I stared at my computer screen, the lines of code blurring as my mind raced with thoughts of Nolan's ultimatum and the impending divorce. Lucy knocked softly before entering, a steaming cup of coffee in her hand. You look like you could use this, she said, placing it on my desk. I managed a weak smile. Thanks, Lucy. I don't know what I'd do without you. She perched on the edge of my desk, concern etched on her face. How are you holding up? I sighed, running a hand through my disheveled hair. Honestly, I feel like I'm drowning. Nolan's really going through with the divorce. His lawyer contacted mine this morning. Lucy's eyes widened. He's serious? I can't believe he'd throw away your marriage over this. Believe it, I said bitterly. Apparently, I'm not the wife he or his mother want me to be. Then that's their loss, Lucy said firmly. You're brilliant, Anna. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. I nodded, grateful for her support. I never thought it would come to this. I thought Nolan understood my dreams. People change, Lucy said softly. Sometimes not for the better. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. Then, Lucy straightened, a determined look in her eye. You know what? Screw them. If Nolan and his mother want to play hardball, let's show them what we're made of. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Lucy grinned, a mischievous glint in her eye. I mean, let's channel all this anger and frustration into our work. Let's make Dreamscape so successful that Nolan and Rose will be kicking themselves for ever doubting you. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of excitement. You're right.
Why should I let them win?
This is my company, my dream. I'm not giving it up for anyone. That's the spirit, Lucy exclaimed. Now, what's our next move? I thought for a moment, then a plan began to form. I think it's time I moved out of the house. Let Nolan and Rose think they've won. Meanwhile, we'll pour everything into the launch. We'll show them what real success looks like. Lucy nodded approvingly. I like it. But where will you stay? Here, I said, gesturing around the office. We have that small apartment upstairs for late nights. I'll make it work. Are you sure? Lucy asked, concern creeping back into her voice. I nodded, feeling more certain than I had in weeks. Absolutely. It's time I put myself first for once. That evening, I returned home one last time. Nolan was out, probably at his mother's, plotting their next move against me. I packed quickly, taking only what I needed. As I zipped up my suitcase, my eyes fell on our wedding photo on the nightstand. For a moment, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the frame. Then, with a deep breath, I turned it face down. That chapter of my life was over. As I drove back to the office, my new temporary home, I felt a strange mix of sadness and exhilaration. I was leaving behind the life I'd known, the future I'd planned with Nolan. But I was also stepping into something new, something entirely my own. I thought of Rose's smug face, of Nolan's ultimatum. They thought they'd won, that they'd force me to choose between my marriage and my dreams. Little did they know, they'd only fueled my determination. As I settled into the small apartment above the office, I opened my laptop and dove back into work. Let Nolan and Rose think they'd broken me. Let them believe they'd won. I smiled to myself as I typed, my fingers flying over the keyboard. They had no idea what was coming. This wasn't just about success anymore. This was about proving them wrong, about showing the world what I was capable of. The game was on, and I intended to win. I stared at the email on my screen, my blood boiling with each word I read. It was from our nosy neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, expressing her concerns about the strange woman living in my house. Apparently, Rose had moved in with Nolan, playing the role of the doting mother-in-law. Can you believe this? I snarled, spinning my laptop around for Lucy to see. She leaned in, her eyes widening as she scanned the message. They've got some nerve, she muttered. It's your house. Exactly, I said, slamming the laptop shut. I bought that house with my own money, before we were even married. And now they're acting like it's their personal playground. Lucy's expression shifted from shock to determination. So, what are you going to do about it? I paused, a plan forming in my mind. I think it's time I reminded them whose name is on the deed. Over the next few days, I threw myself into research. Property laws, real estate markets, everything I needed to know. By the end of the week, I had a plan. You're sure about this? Lucy asked as I finished outlining my strategy. I nodded, a grim smile on my face. Absolutely. If they want to play dirty, I can play dirty too. The next morning, I made a call to a real estate agent I'd researched. I'd like to put my house on the market, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Of course, the agent replied cheerfully. When would be a good time to come by and take some photos? I smiled to myself. Oh, that won't be necessary. I have recent photos I can send you. And don't worry about contacting the current occupants. They're temporary. As soon as I hung up, Lucy burst into applause. That was amazing. But are you really going to sell the house without telling Nolan and Rose? Why not? I shrugged. They didn't tell me they were moving in together. Turnabout is fair play. Over the next few weeks, I watched from afar as potential buyers came and went. Nolan and Rose, oblivious to what was happening, continued their little domestic charade. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, my phone rang. It was the real estate agent, her voice bubbling with excitement. Mrs. Reeves, I have great news. We've received an offer on your property. Full asking price, cash buyer. I felt a rush of vindication. That's wonderful news. Let's proceed immediately. The day of the closing, I sat in my lawyer's office, pen poised over the final documents. As I signed my name, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. As I left the office, my phone buzzed with a text from Nolan. "We need to talk about the divorce settlement. Mom thinks we should keep the house." I laughed out loud, startling a passerby. If only they knew. That evening, I returned to the office, where Lucy was waiting with a bottle of champagne. "To new beginnings," she toasted, handing me a glass. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling lighter than I had in months. "And to sweet revenge," I added with a wink. Just then, my phone exploded with notifications. Texts, calls, voicemails, all from Nolan and Rose. It seemed they'd finally gotten the news. I picked up a call from Nolan, putting it on speaker. "Anna," he shouted, his voice a mix of fury and disbelief. "What the hell is going on? There are people at the house saying they've bought it." "Oh, that," I said casually. "Yes, I sold the house. My house, if you remember. I hope you and your mother have somewhere else to stay." "You can't do this." Rose's shrill voice cut in. "This is our home." I felt a surge of satisfaction.
No, Rose.
It was my home, and now it's someone else's. "I suggest you start packing." I hung up, cutting off their protests. Lucy stared at me, a mix of awe and concern on her face. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, then smiled. "You know what? I'm better than okay. For the first time in years, I feel free." As we toasted again, I knew the war wasn't over. Nolan and Rose wouldn't go down without a fight. But for the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand. Let them come. I was ready. The aftermath of the house sale was nothing short of nuclear. My phone hadn't stopped ringing for days, alternating between Nolan's angry tirades and Rose's hysterical threats. I'd taken to recording every call, a decision that would prove invaluable. "You conniving witch." Rose's shrill voice echoed through my office as I played the latest voicemail on speaker. Lucy winced at the venom in her tone. "You think you can just throw us out on the street? I'll ruin you, Anna. I'll tell everyone what a cold, heartless bitch you really are." I calmly saved the recording to my growing collection of evidence. "Charming as ever, Rose," I muttered. Lucy shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe they're still at it. It's been a week." "Oh, they're just getting started," I replied, a grim smile on my face. "But so am I." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Nolan. "We need to talk. Face to face. No lawyers." I showed Lucy the message. She frowned, concern etching her features. "Are you going to meet him?" I nodded. "I think it's time we had it out once and for all." The cafe we'd agreed on was neutral territory, a place we'd once frequented as a happy couple. Now it felt like a battlefield. Nolan was already there when I arrived, his face a mask of barely contained fury. "Hello, Nolan," I said coolly, sliding into the seat across from him. "How could you do this, Anna?" he hissed, leaning forward. "Selling the house out from under us? It's cruel, even for you." I raised an eyebrow. "Cruel? Like giving me an ultimatum to choose between my dreams and our marriage? Like moving your mother into our home without even discussing it with me?" Nolan had the grace to look slightly abashed, but quickly rallied. "That's different. We were trying to save our marriage. You're just being vindictive." "No, Nolan," I said, my voice steady. "I'm protecting myself and my assets. The house was mine before we married. You have no claim to it." "My mother dash." "Your mother," I interrupted, "has been leaving threatening messages on my voicemail. Messages I've been recording, by the way. If she doesn't stop, I'll be forced to take legal action." Nolan's face paled. "You wouldn't. Try me," I challenged. "I'm done being the villain in your story, Nolan. I'm done apologizing for my ambition, for wanting more than a life of mediocrity." "Is that what you think our life together was?" Nolan asked, hurt creeping into his voice. "Mediocre?" For a moment, I felt a pang of regret. Then I remembered the ultimatum, the alliance with Rose, the constant undermining of my dreams. My resolve hardened. "It became mediocre the moment you decided your mother's expectations were more important than my happiness," I said quietly. Nolan slumped back in his chair, the fight seeming to drain out of him. So this is it then? It's really over? I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. It's been over for a while, Nolan. We just didn't want to admit it. As I stood to leave, Nolan grabbed my wrist. Anna, wait. What am I supposed to tell my mother? Where are we supposed to go? I gently, but firmly removed his hand. That's not my problem anymore, Nolan. You chose your side. Now you have to live with the consequences. I walked out of the cafe, my head held high. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from our lawyer, confirming that the divorce papers were ready to be signed. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months finally starting to lift. The war wasn't over. Rose's threats still hung in the air, and I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was winning. As I drove back to the office, my mind was already racing with ideas for Dreamscape's next big project. Nolan and Rose had tried to clip my wings, to force me into a life that wasn't mine. Instead, they'd only made me more determined to soar. Let them come, I thought, a fierce smile spreading across my face. I'm ready for whatever they throw at me. The best revenge, after all, is living well, and I intended to live spectacularly. The ink was barely dry on the divorce papers when inspiration struck. I'd been staring at my computer screen, trying to focus on our latest project, when suddenly, everything clicked into place. Lucy. I called out, my fingers flying over the keyboard. Get in here. I've got an idea. She rushed in, eyes wide with curiosity. What is it? I grinned, spinning my monitor around to show her. Our next big game. We're calling it Breakaway. As I outlined the concept, a VR game where players navigate complex family dynamics and professional challenges to achieve their dreams, Lucy's expression shifted from interest to excitement. Anna, this is brilliant, she breathed. It's like you've turned your life into a game. I nodded, feeling a surge of pride. Exactly. All those people out there struggling to balance their ambitions with others' expectations? This is for them. We threw ourselves into development, working around the clock. The game took shape, each level reflecting a piece of my journey, from the suffocating family dinners to the exhilaration of professional success. Months flew by. Rose's threats faded into background noise, easily countered by my lawyer with the evidence I'd gathered. Nolan. Well, Nolan became a distant memory, a cautionary tale in the game of life. Finally, launch day arrived. We gathered in the office, surrounded by screens displaying real-time download numbers. As the counter ticked upward, faster and faster, Lucy squeezed my hand. We did it, she whispered. I shook my head, tears pricking my eyes.
No.
I did it. We did it. All of us who've ever been told to dream smaller, to conform, to settle. This is for all of us. The game was an instant hit. Reviews poured in, praising its authenticity and empowering message. Sales skyrocketed, and before we knew it, Dreamscape was the talk of the tech world. Amidst the whirlwind of success, I received an unexpected email. It was from Nolan. Anna, it read, I saw your game. I think I finally understand. I'm sorry for everything. You were right to follow your dreams. I hope you're happy. You deserve it. I stared at the screen, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. There was no bitterness, no desire for reconciliation, just a quiet acknowledgement that we'd both moved on. As the dust settled, I found myself standing in a sleek, modern apartment overlooking the city. My new home, my new life. Lucy joined me on the balcony, handing me a glass of champagne. To new beginnings, she toasted. I clinked my glass against hers, smiling. To dreams realized. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the skyline. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the fights, the tears, the moments of doubt, but also the triumphs, the friendships, the unshakable belief in myself. You know, Lucy said softly, I always knew you'd make it, even when things were at their worst. I turned to her, feeling a rush of gratitude for her unwavering support. I couldn't have done it without you. She shook her head, smiling.
No, Anna.
You did this. You chose yourself, your dreams, your future. You broke free. As night fell, casting the city in a tapestry of lights, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. I'd face my demons, both external and internal, and come out stronger. I'd proven to myself, to Nolan, to Rose, to the world, that a woman's ambitions are not something to be stifled or ashamed of. I thought of all the people playing breakaway, finding the courage to chase their own dreams. In a way, my story had become their story too. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new heights to scale. But for now, standing on this balcony, overlooking the city that had witnessed my transformation, I allowed myself to simply be. Anna Reeves.
Entrepreneur.
Dreamer. Survivor.
Free.
As I raised my glass to the glittering skyline, I made a silent toast to the future, mine, and all those who dared to dream big. The game of life was far from over, but I was finally playing by my own rules. And I was winning.